So here's a nice little tip for the Volca Modular sequencer. It turns out there's a hidden feature that's not actually printed in the manual to do with non-real-time step sequencing. So the way that sequencing works on the Volca Modular is like this. There's a real-time recording mode that we can play our notes in, and there's a non-real-time step recording mode. So if I switch on step recording by holding function and pressing the record button, we can play in a sequence of notes, and they will play back. But they're always going to be very, very short triggers stored in each step, and then we can lengthen the note by using the release knob, say on the envelope. But those are always going to fade down as the envelope releases. Or we can switch on long notes, which is here, it's a function of 10, and that will lengthen these gate times to the full length of each step. But it's just an on-off switch, so we turn all the steps to long and all the steps to short. So I'll just wipe that a second. But if we real-time record, we can get short and long notes. But real-time recording is quite tricky. There's no metronome built into the Volca Modular, so we'd have to set one up by a sync source to get the recording correct, and of course you have to play everything exactly as you want it, just using these keys here, which is quite tricky. But there is another extra option. So it turns out we can actually step record these long notes. It's not something that's actually mentioned in the manual. It's slightly janky, which I suspect is why it wasn't actually published. There's a problem that when we write a long note to a sequence, the following note will also have the same note pitch written as a short note, which we then have to go back and edit. But I'll cover that in detail in a minute. If we go into step record mode, the controls we have are function will exit step record, play will advance through the sequence playing back the notes we've got stored, and then the record button will delete the notes in that sequence. So if I add some notes in, and then exit, and then go back into step record, that's just going to play each one. If I do the same thing again and press record, that is going to erase those, so there's nothing in there now. So what I want to do is record a 4-note phrase, arpeggio sequence. I'm going to add the same notes to steps 1 to 4 and 5 to 8 and so on, making these ones short and these ones long. So if I do that for the short notes, it's fairly simple. Function, step record. I'm going to go D, G, G, A. And then when I want to add the long notes in, you hold the note and then press play. And you'll see that's then, it's got these 4 notes here are short and these notes are long. It should have ended up on step 9, but we've ended up on step 10. As we play that back, it won't seem completely obvious what's happened. There are our long notes. We go back in step record. We've got one extra note here. So we can overwrite those again. Oops, that's not right. We try that again, step record. So, and then we do the same again. And what we've got is the first note has now been overwritten as it spilled over at the end of the sequence onto here. So we've got to go back in step record and change this to a D if we want to keep that sequence. It's entirely possible to access any kind of sequence you want to add if you're aware of the problems you might face. So let's say, for example, now I want to change step 2 to a long note, which was, say, D, so it was an E. I want to make this a long E. So press play. So 3 now essentially sounds blank because we've got a long E and a short E, so we have to go back in and edit again. So D, E, I think it was a G. So that wants to be a G, so we just add that short note back in. And there doesn't seem to be any way to avoid that happening. Like I say, I think that's probably why they didn't write this in the manual, because it's a little bit wonky, but it's incredibly useful if you want to dial in really precise sequences into your Volca Modular. Another thing you might notice is that once we go into step record and we press play to advance through the sequence, the gate times don't actually line up properly with the notes we've recorded. So that isn't quite the same as the way it plays back in real time. So it seems to have shifted everything along a bit in terms of gate time. So it's a little bit, again, a little bit janky when we do that. Another thing that's worth mentioning is these long notes don't have to be one step, we can make them really long. So if I add in something, I want that to be really long, I can add multiple long notes together to make really long notes. Like that. So I really hope that was helpful. It's something I just found by playing around, being a big nerd, and just experimenting as much as possible. So hope you like this, please leave a comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks very much.